Hello and welcome to this Explain 11 presentation about crossover angle of attack. What we are going to do is we fly the default 737 in Explain 11 without any mods right as it comes out of the box, what you get with Explain 11. And we're not going to do any fancy FMC or auto flight or autopilot or IFR or navigation stuff. Nothing of that tonight. Tonight it's only about pure aerodynamics. It's not even very specific to the 737. What I'm going to show you is a fundamental aerodynamic principle that applies to basically every aircraft, but I've chosen the 737 for the demonstration of the effect for a very particular reason. Alright, so this is the default 737, and what we're going to talk about is a certain kind of flight control failure that previous versions of the 737, not the NG, not the current versions of the 737, but the older versions were notorious for. And if you Google 737 rudder hardover or 737 PCU failure, you will find quite a few resources about this kind of flight control failure that caused at least 2 crashes in the early 1990s where 2 737s were lost because of a rudder malfunction. And there's an air crash investigation or Mayday episode on this, so if you're interested in the investigation, how they found out what actually happened to those planes that crashed, because it was a mystery for quite a long time. No one had any idea what was causing those crashes. And there's a very good air crash investigation episode about finding the root cause of the rudder hardover failures. I recommend you watch this. I think it's even on YouTube. If it's on YouTube, I put a link in the description. But that's of course a very generic explanation because it aired on public television. So it's not extremely technical. If you are interested in the technical details and the really pilot specific stuff, I recommend a recording of the American Airlines Advanced Maneuvering Program. That is actually on YouTube. I'm going to put a link in the description. And this is a great presentation by the legendary Warren Vanderberg, who sadly passed away last year. I found that out when I did the research for this video. I didn't even know that. So if you want to see the details of what this is really about, look up the AMMP video. I'm going to put the link in the description. Alright, so of course Warren Vanderberg can explain all of this much better than I could ever do. So I'm just going to stick to the demonstration and leave the technical explanations to him in his video. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to simulate the rudder hardover. Explain doesn't actually have a separate failure mode for that, or maybe it has, I don't even know. But what I'm simply going to do is I'm just going to slam into my rudder pedals to simulate the rudder hardover. Now, of course, the 737 system experts are going to tell me, you can't really do that in the real 737 because there's a rudder limiter, whatever, that prevents exactly this kind from happening. Yes, in the real 737 you probably would need to have to pull a few circuit breakers to deactivate that system. I don't know, I'm not a 737 systems expert. But for the sake of demonstration, we assume there is no rudder limiter, and I can simply introduce the rudder hardover myself by just slamming into the pedals. And the end result is going to be the same. In the real world, the crash was caused by a malfunction of the rudder power control unit, and the rudder flipped over to one side, and that's that. And I'm just going to simulate that by slamming into the pedals. And what I want you to watch out for is this indicator, which the aircraft that crashed didn't have, because it was an earlier generation of the 737 that didn't have an angle of attack indicator. But basically what I want you to understand is that the effect that the rudder has on your flight path depends greatly on the angle of attack. Alright, so right now our angle of attack is quite low, just 1 degrees. I'm killing the autopilot. Autopilot is off. And now I will just... No, the autopilot is not off. Now the autopilot is off. Here we go. Alright, autopilot is off. I'm going to introduce the failure, and I want you to see what happens even if I give full opposite rudder. So here comes the rudder hard over, and I use full ailerons, and I cannot, basically not even stop the roll. It just keeps going to the right. Oh my god, how do we get out of this? And this is basically what happened to the aircraft that crashed. Alright, I'm going to neutralize the rudder again, bring us out of that catastrophic dive. Alright, so what you saw is the rudder is more powerful than the ailerons. Even with the yoke all the way to the left, I could not stop the effect. I could not stop the plane from going over to the right. Alright, now what I want you to see is what happens if I unload the wing and get the angle of attack way down when the rudder hard over happens. Alright, here comes the rudder. I unload the wing, I get the angle of attack down. Whoop, that was a little aggressive, but as you can see, I do have some authority over the roll. So now I can bring up the power, and I can just barely get the yoke off the stops, and with a low angle of attack, you can see I can overpower the rudder with the aileron, only at a low angle of attack. So right now I'm basically at very low angle of attack, and I use full thrust, of course, to keep flying at a low angle of attack. And now that I've bought me some time, I can actually start to deal with the problem, and maybe I can deal with the problem with asymmetric thrust. There you go. Alright, and now I can counteract the rudder failure with asymmetric thrust and actually survive this. Alright, so what I did by unloading the wing and lowering the angle of attack, I bought me some time to deal with the problem. Alright, we go back to our normal situation. My rudder is back in the center position. The plane is now again in coordinated flight. Watch what happens if I don't unload the wing at the time the event happens. If I try to do what an airline pilot is trained to do, keep the altitude. So what I'm going to do, I'll have another rudder hard over, and this time instead of unloading the wing, I will try to keep altitude. Watch what happens. Bam! Yes, the rudder hard over, full opposite aileron, and damn, I'm falling. I need to keep the altitude. I'm loading the wing, and poof, here we go. That's it. Alright. And yeah, I'm going to pause it right here. We don't actually need to spiral it down all the way to the crash, but you saw what happened. With a higher angle of attack, I have no chance of overpowering the rudder. Alright, that's what I wanted to show you. Rudder is the most powerful roll control in the airplane at surprisingly low angles of attack. I need to go aggressively. I need to aggressively unload the wing and get to a low or negative angle of attack in order to overpower the rudder with the ailerons. And that's what I wanted to show you. And this is a basic fact of any airplane I can think of, not really specific to the 737, but the 737 has this history of the rudder failures. Again, check out the video from American Airlines from Warren Vanderberg. He explains it way better than I ever could. Yeah, check out the links that I put in the description. Good night.